there are quite a lot of new professions coming up on set. I think it's a great opportunity for all of us, because we all know these sex scenes. I'm using intimacy coordination to this. We all know these cliché sex scenes. Everybody knows how they are working and what they are meaning. And I think with a good intimacy coordination, it can show so much more without endangering the people who are working in this spot.
I want to move on to this aspect of prevention that's also very important in your field of work. In the post-Me Too era, there is this work that we're all doing together for a systemic change concerning sexual harassment, sexual violence, and intimacy coordination is cited quite often as a good practice, as an example of how we can change things. And I want to ask you specifically, how does it help you in your work to support actors, performers? How does it help you, maybe personally or in general, prevent this situation of harassment, of violence at work and on set?
Yeah, so I think the advent of this role definitely created a veil lifting, a transparency that's being invited by us being on set, to making clear the expectations, making sure people have enough information to give their informed consent to what is being depicted, what they're going to be performing, how much nudity. It also, in specific instances, if we are given the script early enough, we do our little breakdown, that we are able to also ask questions of production. Why are we telling this story? Why are we telling this story now? Is there a particular thing that we're trying to highlight because some folks, depending on their identity or experience and who your audience is, are reading certain things from what you're trying to depict? And I think, in terms of societal change and politics, those things mean a lot more now. Yes. So a specific moment in a story that involves sexuality or marginalized identities or LGBTQIA experiences, it depends on who is telling the story. From the disability community, there's the saying, no story about us without us. So I think that's a very highlighted thing that we try to bring to people's attention when we're reading the scripts. By clarifying everything ahead of time, we are supporting with the legal documents by creating a layperson's terms of what the boundaries are of the performer, what they are consenting to before it goes to the lawyers who turn it into legalese that I can never understand. And I think our actors find the same, that they need someone kind of in between to help, determine what that information is. And so that means that, again, along the lines, like I said before, there's no surprises. I think from a broader standpoint, when we're talking about how we're mitigating violence or assault or harassment, bullying, those kinds of things, people are very informed by media. We educate ourselves a lot of times about sex and sexuality through cinema, through TV shows, and then also through pornography. And so if those influences in our lives are the places where we're learning about the possibilities for our own personal lives, then, telling a story that specifically does not highlight or glorify violence, we're seeing questions and more discussions around how much of a scene of sexual violence do we have to show? Do we need to show it? What is the purpose of showing it? So again, there's kind of like on set and how we're trying to mitigate, harassment and violence and sexual assault in those closed environments of work, and keeping things professional, as you said earlier, but also to broaden that out to our audience and to our demographic and think about the long-term and world impacting effect of that piece of art or that piece of entertainment.
Yes, it's so interesting that you talk about the question of representation of violence as well. But obviously, there is something very practical also about working with an intimacy coordination in terms of prevention of health and safety, and just avoiding situations that put professionals at risk. Obviously, and yes, please.
I was just going to add the other aspect of our work in terms of preparing performers is tools and techniques to help them with emotional bleed off. So a common example of that would be the Romeo and Juliet syndrome, where two performers fall in love with each other, but really they're falling in love with each other's character that they're playing every day. And performers, really, there have been some studies, I believe, in Australia about what we know as traumatic stress disorder. There's post-traumatic stress disorder. So the same kind of trauma that does happen to our bodies when we're really experiencing something versus when we are acting that we are experiencing something. Our mind is telling us, oh, we're in performance. I am acting this emotion, but our body doesn't understand the difference. And those actors do go under a lot of stress, a lot of emotional impact that then can affect anxiety, depression, sense of self, body image issues, those kinds of things that we've seen over and over within the media and through the stories of different actors that have shared this with us, that now we know we can offer some tools to help, take them in and out of that work safely.
That's fantastic. Yes, it's going back to prevention and avoiding those situations, preparing and really nurturing a culture of consent. And I really appreciate this in the way you approach your work. And I want to circle back to Iris, because this culture of consent that we're pushing, developing, nurturing is something that is crucial in the work you do. You are really one of our leaders among the industry, and I know that the work you have done, you as a professional and your peers within the film funds, is essential in terms of prevention of sexual violence, harassment, and maybe broaden a little the discussion and give you the floor to tell us more about this work that's going on, and it's been going on for several years now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes. Because the reasons why we are doing all those things are harassment, are very cruel experiences that people had to live during their work, and I think this is not fair. It's again about a professional environment everybody should be able to work in. So there's one thing a lot of institutes are publishing, and this is something like a code of ethics, a code of conduct, whatever. When we did this in Austria, it was in 21, I think we published the first version of it. When I was reading it, I said, oh my God, this should be normal, common sense, not to yell to each other, treat each other with respect. But the facts showed us, and I think you do know also the Austrian examples that were not that positive in this behalf. But they brought us to the fact that we wrote it down, we published it, and now we, in Austria, we are obliging every company, every production company who is funded by the Film Institute, and this is 80% of our production, to respect this code of ethics. And this code of ethics is part of our of the contracts we are doing with the production companies, and they are obliged to follow this. And if they are not following it, the last possibility or the last punishment would be that they have to reimburse the subsidies, and this is not only meaning the subsidies from the Austrian Film Institute, but also from the regional funds, and of course the broadcasting company would join us on this behalf, and this means that the companies would not survive. So these are really strict measures, and we did this in this very concrete way to make them aware that in fact the laws are there, but nobody knows them, and they are not applied. And this is really a pity. So, in fact, all we are doing is telling them, you are obliged to follow the laws. Those are the laws. Go with it. So, of course, we do hope that we will never have to ask the money back. But I think the creation of awareness, to make them aware about the conditions they should work in, is already helping. And the positive thing is, and this is going on all over Europe, we see that the production companies are opening up. They are opening up their minds. They are respecting the things of behavior they should have done always, but they did not. And the next step we are focusing on, or the next field we are focusing on, is child care on set. There have been issues too, and it's also to make a clear distinction between intimacy coordination, child coaching, child care on set, because these things are very often mixed up, and this one person is overloaded with 5 jobs at a time, which is not possible. So there are quite a lot of new professions coming up on set. I think it's a great opportunity for all of us, because we all know these sex scenes. I'm using intimacy coordination to this. We all know these cliché sex scenes. Everybody knows how they are working and what they are meaning. And I think with a good intimacy coordination, it can show so much more without endangering the people who are working in this spot.